Welcome back, episode 18 of the J2cast, or J2cast, if you're looking for it on Facebook. We are back on video, or I'm back on video. Jesse's joining me on video this time. Reason is, we are here today with Franklin Horton, author of the Borrowed World series, the new book, Locker 9. We're going to talk to him about some ideas behind the book, some things that he really used as basis for a lot of things in the book.
Yeah, his inspiration, his muse.
Yes. And Jesse's done some research on it, going to help us out with some of the reviews and ideas that other people have had with the book. So we're going to throw those at Franklin.
Some creative, some not so much.
Hopefully he'll be a good sport about this, because some of them are kind of out there.
Unsavory. was one of them, but it was not very credible.
But if you can't make fun of dumb people, what good are dumb people? That's
making fun of them is about the best good I can think of.
Yeah. So we're going to do a little bit of that. In the meantime, sit back, enjoy this. But before we do, I almost let it slip my mind. We want to send a shout out, I guess, as the kids would say these days, to Dr. Joe Alton and Nurse Amy, or Dr. Bones and Nurse Amy. We know you've been affected by the fires out in Tennessee. We're thinking about you. We're praying for you, and we hope you get everything back on track soon.
Praying for y'all.
Very, very good people, and you really deserve the best, and we hope it comes that way soon. But for now, we're going to throw it over to our interview with Franklin Horton. And here we are. This is our interview today with Franklin Horton. Jesse is with us this time. He did miss our interview with Chris Weatherman, but he's here for this one today, and we're going to take full advantage of it. And Franklin, thank you for joining us. It's great having you on here. I'm once again, like I said last week, I'm a little geeking out because I've read your books. I just love them to death. So this is kind of my opportunity to pick your brain and to really find out some stuff. So I appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you guys for having me. I am a huge fan of the podcast genre. I don't know about you guys, but podcasts are probably one of my primary sources of news and information anymore, because you can listen on the go. You're getting information from all sources. I love podcasts, so I really appreciate you having me on here.
And you especially love ours, correct?
Absolutely. It is among the best worldwide.
Oh, it's one of the best he's listened to in the last 10 minutes. How about that? Well, I'll tell you, I finished up about a week ago your newest book, Locker 9. I really, really enjoyed it. Quick question on it, starting out, is it seems to me, and I haven't read a lot about it behind the scenes, so this is maybe something I should have researched better, but it takes place in the same world as the Borrowed World series, does it?
It does, with some slight alterations. The time frame has been adjusted a little bit. The disaster takes place at a different time of day, but it's roughly built on the same scenario, just to explore how that same disaster could affect different groups of people.
And that's what I really thought, because the first, in the Borrowed World series, you set it up as an intricate system put together by many people, and that's really the way I took it. This was just the Borrowed in Locker 9. It was a offshoot of what we were reading about in the front of the Borrowed World.
Yeah, the Borrowed World kind of gave you the broader picture of what they refer to as a collapsing systems failure event, where a terror attack or some type of disaster can be widespread enough that it causes basic systems to fail. In Locker 9, you were just looking at a microcosm of that. One girl who was in one place where one of those attacks took place, but then as she left that setting, she began to experience the wider effects on society and the infrastructure, and that began to impact her journey as she, headed for home.
And that's where I really find the premise and the news yesterday with the, first of all, put off as a shooter in Ohio State University, ended up being a car driver, and a knife, using an unconventional method while he claimed to be a lone wolf. It's not hard to see these unconventional methods being synced up among groups and put into effect like you show in the books. That's one of the things I want to really give you props for. Is it seems quite prescient of you to see this as the next step.
Well, I think it's very easy for people to blame guns for events like this, but all it takes is one motivated person, and they can weaponize anything. They can weaponize a car, they can weaponize a kitchen utensil. All it takes is the motivation. So you can't go blaming the instrument. It goes to the motivation and the mindset of the person.
Well, I figure if they keep this up, eventually we'll be doing background checks for automobile purchases. We'll have to close the swap meet loophole, and we'll be Chicago will start outlawing any car with greater than 3 cylinders.
We'll be cutting our steaks
with the Geo Metro then.
So, but I really, like I said, I really appreciate you putting that together, and not to degrade any of the other books, but I really like the different take on it, other than just massive one thing happened and now everybody's dialed back to 1850.
Yeah, well, part of this book was written for a slightly different audience too. It was to bring in more readers than just having the one series would bring in. So you're shooting for a younger crowd. You're also shooting for people with children who are in college. But the thing that I really wanted out of that book was this idea of how social media has put us in this position where we can build networks now to help people get home. And whether you're on a short-term trip, like a business trip, or whether you're on a long-term away from home experience, like going to college or working away from home, we're in a position now where, with using social media and other electronic methods, people can build these safety nets or safety networks, and I really think people should do that for their kids.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's one thing. Some of your characters, I do notice, almost to the fact of making me feel a bit inadequate, is your main protagonist in the Borrowed World and the father in Locker 9 are extremely well documented in their preps. I have to say,
but I'm a regular guy, except that my job, I'm a facility manager. So part of what I do during the day is I write manuals for buildings that we operate. So, when we move into a building, I have these little manuals I give the office manager that has the shutoffs, the fire alarm codes, all that information. And it made me think, well, I need one of these for home. I need a way for my wife to know where the breakers are, the shutoffs are, the gun safe codes, everything, in one spot. So if I'm on a business trip and she needs an operating manual for the home, she's got it.
That is an absolutely brilliant idea. I was just thinking about that for myself. I have the largest residential solar array, I believe, in the entire state of Missouri. By myself, 50,000 watt solar setup. And I've been told by the fire department that my house catches on fire, they're not going to put it out until they can be 100% sure that they're still not getting juice back up in there. So having multiple copies of a facilities manual would be incredible. I mean, if for only on that aspect.
And it was something that I really liked to read about when I first read in the Borrowed World. That was something I hadn't thought about, because I am on the road a lot, and my wife knows where the pantry is. My wife knows where all that is, but there might be other things that I want to do this in the Borrowed World. He makes sure to tell her, go fill up with gasoline, use cards first, cash if you have to, that type of thing. That once I read it, I thought, I would hope she would think that way. But in a bad situation, having it in writing would be. I mean, I can't think of how to even express the value in something like that, of just having the guide there, and it's something that your books have really brought to my attention. That I'll be honest with you, I have been very, very lax on.
Well, if you've ever lived in an older house too, every house has its nuances. So part of
that's my house.
Yeah, well, part of doing that manual was like, well, if this happens, then, you have to turn this valve on and off, or you have to go flip this switch on and off. So it was a way of showing her the little nuances I'd learned about the house when I was gone a lot.
Yeah.
My house built 1930s. It's definitely has its quirks. I will admit to that.
My house isn't that old, but boy, does it have nuances.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, like I said, I commend you on that, because you really brought something to my attention with that I had not thought of, and I thank you for it, because it's.
Well, I appreciate that.
Now, you do say with the new one, you do have a feminine protagonist in Locker 9.
Yeah.
And I know we've talked a little offline about kids and whatnot. Now, do you have an older daughter you base this off of, or is this just you running with the idea?
I have a daughter who turned 12 last week, and I have a son who's 14. And it's at that point where I'm picturing, well, there'll be a time when they go away, and what am I going to do when that time comes? How am I going to prepare? So I feel like now is the time I needed to start thinking about that. So that was an experiment in me putting myself through that mental process of, okay, if she goes away, I kind of want to keep her on the East Coast. I want to have her go to a place that we can agree upon is reasonably safe, and then I want to have preparations in place to get her home if I can't go get her. So that's where the whole book came from, was just me walking myself through that process. And The Borrowed World was similar. The Borrowed World is really step by step, at least in the initial books, based on my own experience of making a trip to Richmond, Virginia 2 or 3 times a month, and planning how I was going to get home if something bad happened. And the guy who is my cohort in the book, Gary, is a friend of mine that I made that trip with frequently. So, he and I were both kind of, gun guys and gear guys, and we talked about this a lot on the road. So, I threw him under the bus, and I threw me under the bus, and I even had to kill off one of his fake son-in-laws in one of the books, and I suffered a little for that. His daughter was ready to string me up.
Well, I noticed in reading these, in the little bit I've talked with you online and things like that it's not always safe to be an acquaintance of yours in your books. It's so far Lloyd's doing well, though. I know he got married in real life. Will he get married in the book?
It's entirely possible. He's almost untrainable. He's at the point he's been single so long that I'm not sure anyone can whip him into shape. Nice. But he is probably willing to try if anybody could take on that project.
Nice. But just some great ideas, like I said, that I really hadn't went on to with your things. I do want to say, though, as much as I enjoy the books and knowing that it's based on you running that trip to Richmond and back, I do want to say while I admire the story, I hope your grandfather was a little less colorful than the one in the book. Or if he was,
a lot of that is fact-based.
Oh, really?
Not the ending. Because people ask, I don't want to give the ending away.
No.
People ask me a lot. They're like, "Did you really do that?" And the answer is no, I didn't.
Okay, well that was, and you hit upon the part that I was thinking, gosh, I hope that part wasn't real. So.
Yeah, that part is not real. But there was a write-up in the September issue of Guns magazine that Mike Venturino did. And he fell in love with these books. And the thing that sucked him into the books was he grew up in the same county where my grandfather was from in West Virginia. And he said that so accurately reflected the way that men were and the way the community was at the time. It was a violent place. People didn't call the law. They settled matters with their own guns and knives and fists. And so he was a rough guy. And part of that made me think in the writing of these books that, if times revert back a few generations, then we will have to become more like the people of a few generations ago. And so that's why that influence continues in there. People used to be a lot tougher, and they used to be a lot more self-sufficient, and we've surrendered a lot of for the luxuries that we all enjoy and love. And part of, I guess, delving into this preparedness lifestyle is the acceptance that you may one day have to give some of this up. And the books are violent. There's a lot of violence in there, but part of that comes from the fact that there is no protection and no assurance that you're going to make it to the next step. If you go into violent scenarios, on TV, there may be some magical protection that saves a character, but if you're looking at it realistically, that doesn't exist.
Well, it sounds a lot like that West Virginia area was similar to the late 1800, early 1900 Joplin area, when it was a mining town and it was miners running the place, and if you weren't rough and ready and able to take care of yourself, you didn't last very long.
Yeah, and another thing along that same line was, my grandfather lost most of his family in the Spanish flu epidemic. So he became the man of the house at 8 years old. But the other side effect of that was growing up with this awareness that, a pandemic could come in and sweep through and change your life in an instant, because we always grew up with that awareness from his stories that all it took was just one illness and half your family's gone. And it hit in midwinter, and they didn't have any way to bury people, and they put them in box cars in the center of town until the ground could thaw out enough to bury people. And it was just a very traumatic time, and that influenced them a lot. And hearing those stories, I guess, gave me a little gloom and doom background to draw on for these books.
Oh, yeah. Well, for myself, it's stories of the Great Depression, listening to my grandparents talk about the things they had to do to get through Dust Bowls and work when when everyone claimed there was no work, and that type of survival that I can really I relate to that. Different area of the country, similar situations, but yet not quite the same.
But it all goes to their mindset, and that's one of the things that I try to bring up in these books is, they had the same mindset that the people in West Virginia had, which is you don't outsource your safety and survival. That falls back in your lap. You can't depend on the government. You can't depend on law enforcement. In the end, your personal safety is your responsibility. Your ability to eat. Your ability to take care of yourself, all that falls back as being your own responsibility.
And really, we were talking about that yesterday, the safety, your personal responsibility with safety and all that. I was listening to a student from Ohio State University. They said, do you feel safe? And he says, well, I don't feel completely safe yet. And I mentioned to Jesse, I said, when's the last time you felt completely safe anywhere?
I spent a year and a half in Iraq. Yeah, I haven't felt safe since. well, I could say 2003, or basically wind that back to I was 12.
But this is a falsehood we're perpetuating now, that you can be totally safe, and you're not. Anything can happen to you at any time, and even if everything's going your way, somebody can decide you're a woman running down the road in California and you need to be their hostage for 2 to 3 weeks. So you're never completely safe. And like you said, I think our ancestors knew that a lot more than we do, and we're letting our kids live the falsehood that you can be completely safe.
Not only were they aware of it, though, they had that thick enough skin, a bit of a tough hide to know that there's no guarantee of safety, but that doesn't have to suck the joy out of life.
Yeah, well, it definitely is. And in your books, it would be very easy in your books for them to get very, very depressing and very that, but you have the characters like Lloyd and all that to kind of bring it back up some once in a while. You pull it. I like the way you pull that back and keep you from getting too down.
I just like that.
Well, you know, people comment a lot on the humor of the books because those characters do banter back and forth, and there's a lot of sarcasm and wit, and it's like the same experiences that people that are in dangerous situations and dangerous jobs rely on to keep them from focusing on the awareness that bad things happen.
Yeah, I'd have to say being in combat zones for as long as I had been. Yeah, humor is what helps you get through it. It's what helps. It's a great coping mechanism on a lot of that, and the bantering itself kind of helps build camaraderie.
And there really is in the book. Some of the characters, some of the best banter is between the people that have known each other the longest. Is I've noticed is they've really got some great things going on there, and you can tell it's based on a lot of the people that you do know and you do. I kind of get the feeling once in a while that what we're reading in there is probably based on actual conversations outside, not in the same circumstance, but still based on things that have actually been said.
Well, it is, and it's been interesting because I based so much of it on my coworkers that there's always a lot of discussion and suspicion at work as to who a character is based on, or whether I'm going to kill off somebody from human resources in the next book. You know,
that was my next question, because there is one character. I'm not going to say who. I'm not going to say anything about him. I'm going to say she was not put in a flattering light. So I didn't know. Has that person read the book? Do they know it's about? Do they know who it's based on?
I don't think they have read the book, but a lot of people ask about that person. And you know, the thing is, you never know when a situation like this could occur. Part of being prepared is that, you know, it could happen anytime. And this guy was not with his buddies when this terrorism event occurred. He was with a group of coworkers, most of whom he did not get along with. So you can't choose your traveling companions. And he ended up with a bunch of people that he's like, you know, of all the people I could have got stuck with, I had to get stuck with these people. And that's part of where that sarcasm and complaining and arguing comes in. And that, I think, is totally realistic. If that happens to you on these business trips, bantering and arguing and infighting and sniping at each other, then, you know, it's probably going to happen like that in a post-collapse situation too.
Well, I can't tell you, Locker 9, I think I mentioned on your Facebook site, I read it exactly the wrong time because I'm reading it while trapped in an airplane at 30,000 feet and realizing I don't have my truck. I don't have anywhere near my normal get home bag. I don't. So it was a fantastic book, not the book to read when you're by yourself in a little metal tube and heading to 2 hours south of DC.
I can't tell you how many times I have gotten messages in the middle of the night, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., from truck drivers or people in hotels saying, you know, I'm in a hotel and the power went off and I'm realizing that I have a vehicle outside sitting on empty. You know, this has happened dozens of times. Or truck drivers who tell me, you know, my whole system of going into a city and waiting to fill up the next day has changed. You know, I fill up that night. I'm not sitting there all night worrying about this empty fuel tank.
Oh, I mean, you've definitely, the books, I've always been over half tank. I've always wanted my tank over half full anyhow. But your books have really put that through there, because that is a major thread in the first part of the borrowed world. I
need to have my wife read his books then.
Yeah. She I don't know if it'll work, but it'd be a hell of a goal.
Well, you know, it's interesting because post-apocalyptic fiction, there are some books that women hate. And there are some books that women love, and I have a lot of women readers because there are so many women characters in these books. And one of the things that women complain about is that they show up in a lot of books as somebody to be rescued, or they're like part of the plot. They're a plot element, but they want to be characters. Yeah, and so there are a lot of women characters in here, and they are people who take action, and they are people who defend themselves, and they are not people who sit around waiting to be told what to do. So this is a book that a lot of women have really enjoyed.
That's something I've read a lot on the reviews, is you've received a lot of accolades for having and I quote, a well-developed heroine, referring to Grace, and that has been something that had been consistent, considering the fact that on Goodreads.com you've got a 4.2 star average, and on Amazon.com you're at a 4.7 star average just for this book.
Jeez, that's good.
Yeah, just for Locker 9. Now, if you want to hear them, I did write down a couple of excerpts from some people that kept you from getting the full 5 stars on here. If
there's one really good one. Did you write down the Bumpkin Bloodbath one? That's my favorite.
No, Bumpkin Bloodbath. I have to say, okay, we're gonna keep this as family friendly as possible. So everyone, please excuse this one word. Logan on Goodreads.com gave it a 1 star, and after calling it a prepper masturbation aid. Oh wait, pause for effect.
And that's negative.
Well, and then the genius goes on to admit that he didn't finish the book, but he predicted that there would be rape gangs in there, and apparently that was some sort of accusation to this being tripe. But I have to say that that 1 star and just the mudslinging that was going on in that one, I think that person's just going to be shy of happiness their whole life.
All I want to say about Logan is he should not go into trying to be a prophet for a career, because he didn't guess it all right.
No, so, that wasn't all I could find wrong with what it was that this particular commenter put, but it was I just thought that those were the funniest. And then another one on Goodreads.com, Kevin rated it 1 star, but complained that all of the speaking characters were white. And I made that comment to Jeff, and apparently Kevin was wrong.
Yeah, no, there's non-white people in the book.
Yeah, I think it just, after reading the rest of the comments on there that this one person put on there, it's like they were just hunting for something.
I am right. Am I remembering correctly? Because
actually, I think if you go through all my books, you will never find the mention of what race a character is.
Maybe because
I leave that to the imagination.
Maybe I assumed that due to the language phrasing. Some of the maybe I'm guilty then. Because there was one character in the first part of the first book that I assumed. Well, actually, there were 2 characters. One that was very aggressive, wanting something from the main character, and one after the main character dealt with it, another character who I assumed was also of the same race basically said he was in the right because the guy was out of line. So maybe I was correct. I don't know if I was correct or not. I assumed those 2 characters were of a different race,
well,
but it was because of diction and language used in it.
I think that Kevin was just looking for something to whine about. I hope Kevin finds the safe space that he's looking for, and enjoys being the warrior of the keyboard that he is. But for the most part, I mean, you have just got these rave reviews over your Borrowed World series and Locker 9. Everyone has just been complimenting you over and over and over again about how well developed this female lead is.
Well, I appreciate that, because I'm 50. I'll be 51 tomorrow. Yes, exactly.
Happy birthday, by the way.
I appreciate it. But I started writing at 15 years old, and I wrote 7 novels that I never could sell, because the system used to be that you had to have an agent who got you to a publisher, all that stuff. And what changed was Amazon created this system where anybody could publish. And it's really only come into fruition over the last couple of years. But, I went from a book that I wrote, edited, and, spent my own money on, and ended up, as of this point, I've sold like 70 or 80,000 copies of it. And it's just amazing to me that, that this system is in place now that allows an individual to do this. And I'm very grateful for that. I just think it's crazy, that for years we had this system that locked people out.
Oh, yeah.
And now anybody who has a good story to tell can find a way to get in there. And, the ultimate judge is not whether a publisher accepts you or not, but whether the public buys the books and the individual reviews that they leave.
Well, you're being weighed in a proper fashion now, rather than what fits in the pigeonhole.
Now,
Exactly.
it's still very hard, is it not, to get into the chain bookstores, though? Do they still want you to go through that same old-fashioned route to get into the chains? Because
for the most part.
Well, because I've always looked for them just in case they're there, because I was going to do the same thing for you I do for Chris Weatherman, and I always go to, if I find his books, I bring them out and I put them to the fronts out, and I cover the books behind them, so that if you're walking along, you see them. Nice. And I want to do it for you, so hopefully one of these days we'll see them in the bookstores, so that I can do my little rogue book shuffling thing for you as well.
Well, Chris had a couple of books who came out through a publisher.
Okay.
And so he actually had that venue for a while and gave it up of his own accord because it is so difficult to deal with them. Your money is constantly 9 months behind.
Oh, wow.
You're only getting 15% of the sales. 85% goes to everybody else along the chain. Amazon pays you 70%. So, you're selling fewer books, but you don't have to sell as many books to, make your money back.
Yeah. Less people taking a chunk out of it. That's always good.
Yeah.
That's now but you will, if there's hopefully, with our listener base, and I'm going to ask some of the smaller ones around here. You will do bulk sales if a smaller bookstore wants to carry them, or if somebody wants to.
I have offered them wholesale to many booksellers. There are preparedness stores down in the Asheville area, Carolina. Readiness carries them. There's stores around the country that contact me, and they're like, send me a dozen copies. And, I've been very happy to work with small booksellers and preparedness stores and anybody that wants to sell them. Or, I sell them to individuals. I ship out books several times a week. One book, a whole set, whatever anybody wants. You can get on my website and email me and say, hey, I want a signed copy. I will gladly hook you up.
Great. Now, you were talking about, my next question was, when did you first decide you had a story to tell? It sounds like 15 you really got started. When did the Borrowed World really, you sat down and you said, I've got something I'm going to put together here and put out there? How long did it take you to put the Borrowed World together and to actually get it out on the market?
It's I started making this trip to Richmond, which from my home was 325 miles. I started making that trip in 1999, and I made that trip for about 5 or 6 years, 2 or 3 times a month. So it was, a lot of hauling back and forth. During that time, we had, the 9/11 attacks, and we had Hurricane Katrina. And Hurricane Katrina especially made me think, if I'm in Richmond and a hurricane comes inland, and for some reason I become one of these Superdome people, what am I going to do? So I went through this process of starting to pack gear with me because my background was in backpacking. So I had backpacks, I had camping gear. So I started taking that with me and thought, well, if things get rough, I've got a route home. I know how I'm going to do it. So I did that mental exercise. And then, I wasn't writing during that time because I'd become really frustrated with the fact it was so difficult to get through. So I just quit. And then I went to dinner one night with the guy who ended up being Lloyd in the book, who was a friend of mine from, like 3rd grade on. And he's like, well, if you want to write, why aren't you writing? It's a simple thing. If you like to write, who cares if anybody reads it or not? So I was like, well, that's really good. So I started writing, and the book came together really quickly. I wrote it at work on my lunch breaks, and I figured if I can get 3 or 4 pages done every day on lunch, then in 3 or 4 months I can have a book. So that's what happened, and then I contacted an editor who I paid independently to edit the book for me. Then I contacted a cover designer who did the covers for me, and It cost me about 800 and some bucks to put the first book out. And, I didn't have to spend that money. You can do it for free. But, editing cuts back a little bit on people's complaints about, bad grammar and misspellings and all that. So I decided I was going to do it right and spend that amount of money. And my only hope was that I would eventually make my $876.40 back. And I did. So I was real pleased with that.
Well, that's great. I know that's one of the reasons we are really enjoying the podcasting and the YouTube and all that, is it gives us full control over the content, gives us full control over the distribution and all that. And it sounds like you're taking advantage of many similar opportunities with the publishing side of it.
Yeah, it's really amazing. If I find a typo today, I can tonight fix that typo, and tomorrow in the ebook version, that typo will be gone. So, it's an immediate turnaround, at least in the ebook version. Once the audiobook is done, you're committed. There's no fixing that very easily. The print book takes a little more hassle to change too, but the ebook is just an instantaneous change almost.
And I read them all on the ebooks, and I know you've had a sale going. I don't know if the sale's still going today, which
it ran out yesterday morning.
Well, good, because I think they're worth more than that. So I
appreciate that.
I paid the full price, and I think they were worth every bit of the full price. I think was it 99 cents a piece? That was crazy.
Yeah. Well, and the reason that I did that is, you reach these points every once in a while where you want to just bring in a surge of readers, because what it helps you do is climb the charts a little higher, and that gets you more visibility. So if it takes dropping the price a little bit to do that, then it pays off in the end. It's just a little marketing strategy, and it helps a little bit.
It's very similar. I work a lot with bands, and it's very similar to the pre-orders on records then, because if you get all these people to pre-order the record 3-4 months ahead of time, it all counts as your first day sales. So it looks like your record has really come out and done good. It gets you more eyes. It gets you more people going, hey, I need to check that out because it's done so well right out of the gate. So
Amazon has the opposite strategy, which is if they don't count pre-orders towards your first day's sale. So they don't help you climb that way. It's everything after that first day that helps you climb with Amazon.
Really? So I guess that I don't know. Does that mean we should buy the first day, or we should wait till the second day for you? Which works out better for you?
At this point, I don't care, as long as people buy the book and they tell their friends and they help me spread the word. Because that's the big thing. The difference between you and having a publisher is, if you've got a publisher behind you, that in theory they support you and advertise for you. In reality, that's probably not so much the case. But if you are an independently published author, word of mouth is it. And, Facebook is my biggest venue for reaching people and getting people to reach out to their friends and spreading the word. So, this is my marketing machine right here, is talking to people and, the grassroots.
Well, I can vouch for it. It's the way I came across them. I actually had 3 friends, a husband and wife, and then another friend who had all read them and highly recommended them, and that's how I came upon them. So hopefully we've got some people checking this out that are going to take our word for it that they need to check them out too, because like I said, not only are they a good read, they've got some great ideas in them that I hadn't thought of yet.
Well, now I really have to read it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they're on audio too, and people love the audiobook because they can listen driving. I think the audiobook has sold like 28,000 copies across the various 4 books. But the audio is an entirely different experience because you've got this narrator who is telling you the story. And even for me, by the time I finish writing and editing the book, I'm sick of reading through the manuscript. And then when the narrator reads it for the first time and I get to hear that, it's like a whole new story. So I really recommend the audiobook too for those folks who don't want to actually sit down and flip through it.
And there was a lot of comments on Amazon specifically praising the quality of the narration in Locker 9.
Now, who did your narration? I don't do many audiobooks myself because I find I've got horrible ADD. So I'll go off on a thought. Something will trigger a thought, and then I'll realize I've just missed the last 2 minutes of the book because I've been thinking on something else. But I've also heard that. Who does your audiobooks for you?
The guy who does them is Kevin Pierce. And Kevin Pierce kind of became known to the post-apocalyptic audience through doing Glenn Tate's 299 Days series. Mm-hmm. But since then, he's gone on to do a lot of post-apocalyptic books, and we kind of jokingly refer to him as the voice of the apocalypse. And people make comments that, if there's a disaster and they hear Kevin Pierce speaking out of the clouds, they know it's the end. Because they've just come to associate his voice with disaster.
Mm-hmm. I may have to listen to one of them now just so I'll know the voice to watch out for.
He's good.
That's like I said, I wanted you to put a plug in there, especially if he does all good work. We want to recognize him for
Absolutely.
it. It's just such, like I said, such a growth area, and I know. We talked offline a little bit about the prepper camp. We also spoke with Chris about it. I know Chris couldn't stay. He mentioned on his interview that he had a family emergency. He couldn't stay. Now, this looks like nothing we have around here. Will you
want to?
Yeah. Will you be will you be at this thing next year, the prepper camp?
Yeah, there's two events that I do that are in roughly the Asheville, North Carolina area. The first one is called Heritage Life Skills that comes up in April, and it's put on by the folks at Carolina Readiness in Waynesville, North Carolina, and it is an opportunity also to go and spend 3 days taking intensive classes in everything from intelligence to, choosing weapons, to patrolling techniques, to canning, to butchering meat, just all this stuff. And it's very similar to prepper camp. The difference with prepper camp is that you're staying there and you're just, immersed in this environment for 3 days with just great people who think like you do, and they're interested in the same kind of things. And there are seminars that you can go to, and I know that Chris referred to these also, that some of these are real focused on selling product, and prepper camp and Heritage Life Skills are not like that. These are knowledge-based events, which is what's so unique about them.
Well, it's definitely, if our listeners and our viewers want to look it up, you put prepper camp into Google, it's going to come up. I really expected to put one in and find one everywhere, but it's the one you're talking about is the deal, apparently, and you've got our attention on it, so we're hoping it works out.
Well, there are people down there in every field. If I don't know if you guys follow Engineer 775 Scott Hunt on YouTube.
I do.
Big solar guy. He's there. He's loafing around, and you have the opportunity to go talk to him, and just people just from all walks of life and all interests. So it's everything from the more military and firearms oriented to the more homesteading oriented to the bushcraft oriented. So it's the full spectrum of preparedness minded people.
Well, it definitely looks like a great event. We've had some that were really I won't say disenfranchised, but they did disappoint us, a couple of them around here. So it's good to know somebody's doing them like that, because that's really what we were looking for when we went to the local ones, and we found a lot of guys who were not actually they weren't into homesteading, they weren't into prepping, they weren't into this. They just had something they were trying to shill and get you to throw some money at them.
Got some great deals on buckets, though.
Yeah, we did.
Well, Rick and Jane Austen are the real deal, and they are there living it and telling it. So that's what it's about. It's a knowledge-based thing, and you get the opportunity not just to take the classes, but to hang out with the people, and that's what's really fun. So you're not just seeing the public appearance. I'm an instructor side, but the social hanging out, personal side of the instructors also.
Well, that's like I said, that sounds like what I think is we need more of across the nation.
I'm ready to go.
Yeah. So
I haven't unpacked for my last trip. So
yeah. Well, that's well, he didn't unpack to go on the trip either. That's how he about ended up in jail. But one 9mm round.
One little bullet left in your backpack will cost you an hour and a half in the security office talking to port security, ship security, local sheriff's department. It will complicate your vacation.
He about got to see a part of Florida a lot of people don't see. Or maybe a lot of people do see. I don't know.
Statistically,
I haven't flown since 9/11 for that same reason, because I'm so disorganized. Who knows what could fall out of my bag?
I was feeling for big knives and full magazines and stuff. Apparently there was one little 9mm ball round kicking around in there, and boy, it caused a complication that my wife stared at me for that entire hour and 45 minutes I was in there. She's looking at me like, I love you, but you're an idiot.
Yeah. Now, when I went out to Virginia, I did take along. I checked my 9mm Glock, and I had some I had some extra magazines, and I had a couple 100 rounds of ammo as check baggage, because they eyeball me enough with all my computers and everything that it takes me forever to go through anyhow.
That, and they think you're Kevin James.
Yes. That's sadly, yes.
It's that healthy banter we were talking about.
Yes. I hear it from my kids too. That's it's everywhere. But I do know that made me feel better once I got there, that I was able to at least do that much. But like you, if given the opportunity, I'm going to drive it before I fly it. However, unfortunately, with my line of work, sometimes they wait to the last minute to tell me I have to be somewhere, and I don't have the opportunity to drive it, and I have to. So that we did our last podcast was all on how to prep around trips like that.
Well, I've got a guy that who is a friend of mine from Facebook, who had read the books, and he wrote to me because he works. I think his field is repairing like MRI machines or something like that. So he's always flying around the country to work on machines, and he decided, he's just going to pack him a bug out bag, and he FedExes it to wherever he's going to be working, so it's there waiting on him at the hotel when he gets there. He packs his firearm in the legal manner and has it shipped, so everything's there and waiting on him, and he's just decided that if that's what it takes for him to be comfortable in his line of work, that's how he's going to do it.
That's a great idea. I gave that some thought until I realized that my get home bag would get to Charleston or Charlottesville about 24 hours before I left. And so that's why I decided I had a mini bug out bag stuffed in my bottom of my carry-on luggage. I had my gun in another carry-on. I had more stuff in my carry-ons. It was wild, but if it would have happened, I probably would have been trying to seek you out on the way home, because I've never been through the backwoods of any of that area before.
Well, what I tell people is I'm not too far away from the Interstate 81 corridor, so if I have people that I'm friends with, I tell them, if you're in D.C., if you're in Richmond, if you're in Charlottesville, and you're heading west, look me up.
Well, I definitely wanted to make it out to the book signing, because it sounds like a lot of fun. Like you say, with the prepper community, when you meet the like-minded people, they're always just amazingly nice and amazingly helpful. The ones who are really in it for the reasons that we all are in it, not just to make a buck, not just to try to sell somebody something and get the heck out of town. They've always been just exceedingly friendly, exceedingly accommodating, including yourself.
Oh yes, some of the flea market secondhand pocket knife junk tool people at some of the prepper shows we've been to. Not so useful, not so nice.
Well, there were folks at Prepper Camp who had come down from Massachusetts because they had been looking for the same type of event up there. And even though there's a big preparedness community, there are just no similar events. So a bunch of them got together and carpooled down. And these are people I had talked to on Facebook too, so it was great to meet them in person. And it's pretty cool that people are taking those ideas and going back and hoping to seed them in their own communities. Of course, in Massachusetts, the best thing they can do is get out of there and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Now, putting that together, that's what I just thought was prepper camp would be sounds like would be an excellent place to make those face-to-face acquaintances with people that perhaps you got to know on Facebook, and make that final call that, you know, I'm going to make myself available to them should they be in the need for it. Or, you know what, now that I've met them in person, maybe I'm going to rethink that.
Well, fortunately, there were no situations where I was like, you know, there is no way I'm going to that guy's house.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everybody we talked to was just really cool, and it was people that you thought, well, you know, those are the kind of people I should be around more often.
Mm-hmm. And
now I'm starting to have apprehensions about going. I don't want anybody to think that about me.
Oh, well, you know, they sound very polite and they wouldn't say it, so you'd never know.
Yeah, but our viewership would.
Oh. But I do.
Yeah, they would unfriend you on Facebook afterwards.
Yeah.
See,
politely though.
Yeah. See, I'm a polite unfriender. I don't unfriend anybody on Facebook. I just unfollow so I don't see them anymore.
Yeah.
You know,
out of sight, out of mind.
Right. So, but I do, and that's a major part of Locker 9 is the setup of that network. And I don't want to give part of the book away, but it is. I really, without saying anything about the book, I really enjoyed the way that the father let her know the places that she was able to go.
That kind of goes back to this thing that years ago parents might tell their kid, well, you know, if you ever need any help, that's somebody you can look up, you know, or, you know, I've got a cousin in that town who can help you out, you know, if you have trouble or whatever. Yeah. Well, social media gives us the opportunity because we're suddenly back in communication with high school friends and, you know, college friends or old work buddies or whatever to recruit those people to be part of an informal network. And, you know, how many people do you know who have kids the same age as your own kids who may be in the same situation? Mm-hmm. So you're in a position to mutually support each other and offer mutual aid and saying, well, if your kid needs help getting home, I can help if you'll help my kid get home.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it's, like I said, it's something I've thought of. I guess you could say I've been fortunate because so far the ones that have moved out haven't moved that far away that I've had to worry about that. But it's, now thinking about it, like, because, you know, I got two more still to go, that if one of them goes further away, then, you know, setting up a at least, you know, even if it's not a CME, an EMP or something like that, even if it's just they're driving home for the holidays and they've got car problems or they need help getting another tire or something like that, just knowing to be able to go, well, I know these people along the area that'll, you know, they can at least direct you to the place that isn't going to steal your money and keep your tire.
Yeah.
So it's great on multiple levels to have that laid out.
Well, and I'm already seeing, you know, not that I came up with this idea, but I see this in action a lot. Mm-hmm. You know, I'll see somebody post on Facebook, you know, I have a son who's going to college in this state. Does anybody live within an hour or so of that area? And these are prepper people. So they're not asking just, you know, for, you know, restaurant recommendations. They're trying to build a support community, people that the child can go to for help. And I think that's a great idea. I think that when you know where they're going, that's the time to start building that network.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely I admire your planning. I consider myself a planner, but so far from the sound of it, I'm at the feet of the master because I don't. I haven't looked that far down the road, but
you know, part of writing a book is that you force yourself to go through that process. You know, even if you would not always be as prepared in real life as the characters are in the book, writing the book makes you take it that extra step because you got to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. I have a general author question for you. When you're immersing yourself into that character role, does that have a tendency to affect your day-to-day life and interactions? I mean, are you so immersed into that you're putting yourself in that person's shoes? Do you have certain social changes in yourself while you're going through this process?
Yeah, and it really depends on the kind of the mood of the book, because if it's in a dark part of the book where there's violence and suspicion and paranoia and all that going on, I can feel myself starting to be, like when I leave the house and go to town, I'm watching who I pass, and I'm watching the people on the street, and I'm watching the people beside me at the gas pumps, because you really have to put yourself in that world.
That's every day for me.
Well, it is for me too. But the part of writing a book that makes it interesting is you're putting yourself in the different characters,
right,
too. So you're examining that perspective, maybe from a prepared person, but then tomorrow you have to go in and be the unprepared person.
That's what I wanted to know. I mean, to me, that would be terrifying. On a certain level. I mean, I'm hyper aware, battle mind, things like that. And so to immerse yourself into a character that's the unprepared person, and you're looking around for real life scenarios or potential worst case scenarios, what would this unprepared person do?
You have to put yourself into the shoes of people who are unprepared. Then you have to say to yourself, what would.
Well, the answer is always go to Jesse's house. What would this unprepared person I know do? Call Jesse.
There is a value in creating characters like that, though, because, I have a character in the book that I identify with, but then I get emails from people who say, oh, my God, that unprepared person, that's totally me. That's totally what I would have done. That's where I am in my life, and I don't want to be that person if this situation happens. I want to be the other person. So, part of and this is something that a writer told me early on in post-apocalyptic fiction was, every guy can't be the superhero, and everybody can't have, the full auto HK hidden under the car seat. You've got to have the examples all the way across the spectrum, from the mildly prepared to the unprepared to the completely oblivious person who is in constant denial of what's going on around them. That allows more people to see into the world of the book, because there will be somebody they identify with.
How does that feel to you as an author, to know that there are people, when they do that, oh my God, that is so me, and I don't want to be that person? How does that feel to you to know that your love and passion that you put into this has been able to, in some way, help somebody?
Well, that's the ultimate reward of this, because, sure, getting a royalty check is nice, and having the book move up in the charts, but, the real satisfaction, internally, is when somebody says, oh my God, this book just is amazing. This book has changed my life. This book has changed the way I think, or this book has taught me something that, that I needed to know. That's what you like to hear. Those are the things that just really are powerful to hear from a reader.
Well, I had a selfish reason for asking that question, even though, again, I have to admit, I haven't taken the opportunity to read your work yet, but obviously Jeff has, and he was fangirling, by the way.
I'm a girly, but
fanboying, whatever. He didn't have the hands up or anything, but he was. But this is, well, for both of us, this is a great opportunity to be able to talk to you. But with what we do with our J2 J2cast setup, is our ultimate goal is to try to help people and to try to give them some good bit of practical knowledge, anything, any little bit of help that we can. And someday I want someone to post that we helped them, even if it is just the tampon water filter.
That'll
well,
be
and hopefully they won't say, well, your podcast should be entitled Bumpkin Bloodbath.
Yeah.
Because that still remains my favorite negative review off Amazon.
Bumpkin Bloodbath.
We have a
you need to get that. You need to get a T-shirt that says Bumpkin
That's
Bloodbath.
That's an excellent idea.
You've got that one that says you're dangerously close to being killed off in my novel.
Yeah.
I saw that in your Facebook thing. Like I mentioned before the show, I had trolled you.
It'd also be a fantastic name for a movie in the background of your book. Somebody, we were, before everything went to hell, we were going to go see Bumpkin Bloodbath.
There you go. Put that in there. Or the college girl, was her roommate was terribly upset that there was this catastrophic event happened because she had tickets to go see the new band Bumpkin Bloodbath.
Or you use that name and you make the person who left it a member of Bumpkin Bloodbath, and you go to great lengths to kill them off in the book. That can be a little revenge.
Yeah, or
exercise some demons.
I would never do that.
That or Logan meets his end by a rape gang.
Well, I got to tell you, on your book, you say when people identify, I found myself throughout the book jumping around with who I identified, depending on, in different situations. I'd be like, okay, I see where Gary's coming from in that, or no, Jim had it right there, or even I just had a whole brain freeze here on the lady's name that travels with them.
Randy.
Yeah, and so I jumped around. I would be like, each character I could see, I can side with them on this one, or I can go with them, or I can see where the other two aren't understanding this or something.
But as an author, one of the things that you learn as part of structuring a novel is your characters can't be all alike. Mm-hmm. So you have to draw these distinctions between them, and you have to exaggerate those distinctions. Mm-hmm. So, Jim is a little more violent than Gary, and Gary accepts that violence is part of the deal they find themselves in, but he tries to be basically a nice guy, use good language. And then you've got Randy, who is kind of maternal and motherly, but she accepts that she may have to slit your throat.
Yeah.
So you've got to draw those distinctions just for the purpose of building a good story, but it does create a variety that people can identify with.
Well, I did. That's what I liked about it. Like I said, I didn't find myself just going, well, this one character has it all right all the time, and the others are all wrong all the time. Each character had their time to kind of shine and to make a point that really I thought, not every time, but each one they moved around. Even Lloyd, came in there. Like I said, he's now. Once I found out that he was real and there's actually a barbershop and they actually do all that. When I saw your thing online, I said, okay, now I got to take a road trip because.
Well, Lloyd says he'll call me or text me and he'll be like, somebody just stopped in front of my shop and took a selfie in front of the sign and then got in their car and drove off.
Well, I think that shows that you either captured his essence or you took the basis of it and really ran with it in a good way. That people want to do that. So I admire your work there, that you were able to do that. Much the same way I admire people that can paint and it look anything like a real person, because I can't.
If I tried painting anything, it would look like a Bumpkin Bloodbath.
But and we're right at an hour, and I'm going to thank you again for coming in and joining us. And it's been a pleasure getting to talk to you about this and getting some more information and really finding out some of the stories behind it, but also ways that this has helped yourself, us, and other people that you've talked to. Please, keep putting them out. I'm going to keep buying them. I'm going to keep reading them. I know I've got other friends who are going to as well. So
I'm going to start reading them.
I appreciate you guys having me on. It's been fun hanging out with you. If anybody is interested in communicating with me or checking the books out, they should go to my website, franklinhorton.com, or they can visit me on Facebook. The books are on Amazon. They're on Audible. But you guys next year should come to Prepper Camp and we meet up in person.
If at all possible, I am definitely going to be there. I've just got to. I'm going to have to cross my fingers and say a prayer that I don't get booked on a job then. So that or hide.
Schedule some flu. Or
So, that would be great. Once again, we're going to throw it back, but we just appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much.
welcome back. Great interview with Franklin. I'm so excited. This is something I wanted to do, and just sit down, talk with him about his books, and to have him not. I guess I didn't have to share him with anybody. It wasn't a book signing. It wasn't anything like that. He was all ours. We had him pinned down.
Okay, you just confirmed that fangirling comment I mentioned earlier. I haven't had an opportunity to read his work yet, but one thing I do have to say, dang nice fellow.
He is great guy. As so many preppers are. It's very unusual to meet a prepper that is just somebody you don't want to talk to.
I feel bemiss that I didn't have an opportunity to actually be here whenever you were talking to Chris. He seemed like such a pleasant guy himself.
He is, and we're hoping to have more for you. We're going to be talking to more authors, more people who are really doing their best to make this a interesting and learning experience for everybody. And we, of course, as always, appreciate you listening, watching on YouTube. You're all just the reason we do this. Honestly, it is. We're definitely not doing it for the money right now. Please tell others about it. If you enjoy it, let us know what more you want to hear. Do you want to hear more how-to? Do you want to hear more political commentary like last week where we talk about snowflakes and everything else? Or is there something we haven't thought of? Let us know. Email Jesse here, Jesse at come on, Jeff. Jesse at J2cast.com and Jeff at J2cast.com. Or, of course, check us out on Facebook. Mm-hmm. And we'd love to hear from you. The ones we have heard from, we get a kick out of. Mm-hmm. And so please let us know what we can do to help you in questions you have and things that you may want approached in this I guess lifestyle, or I don't know, is lifestyle a good way to put this?
It's a socially acceptable term, yes. I imagine. Yeah. I guess.
But in the meantime,
it's our show.
Yeah, we can say whatever we're going to do in the meantime. But take care of yourselves. Have yourselves a great day.
Be safe, and God bless.